Among the several entries in the Scooby-Doo franchise, one of the most popular and admired is the direct-to-video movie Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, and for good reason, as the filmmakers took the concept of these mystery-solving youngsters and their talking dog and evolved them in a way that showed a lot of creativity. The movie would even become a bit of an influence on a lot of Scooby's future adventures. While this was a new incarnation and an attempt to reinvigorate the franchise, there was still a level of respect for what came before. One thing it did was bring back the original quintet, as with the exception of a pup named Scooby-Doo, most of the recent Scooby specials and series were largely focused on Scooby and Shaggy, with maybe Daphne and Scrappy-Doo. This returned to the partnership of Scooby, Shaggy, Daphne, Fred, and Velma, and showed how they each worked together to solve this mystery. The opening even includes a classic scenario, with them being chased by someone in a costume and dressed in their original outfits, along with playing the famous theme song from Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? When they reunite years later, there are changes to the way they dress, although Shaggy is still wearing that green shirt. I like how we see them going through the same predicaments of dealing with people pretending to be monsters. But like Daphne keeps hoping, there's a question of whether there will be a change to the formula, and boy is there. It's not really a spoiler to say that when the Mystery Gang ends up on the titular island, they eventually discover there are real monsters there, and not just some old man trying to scare people. That was even one of the big selling points of the advertising, making it clear this would not be the same old story. While there had been previous Scooby-Doo productions with real ghosts and monsters, most notably The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo and Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf. However, there was something different about the way Zombie Island went about it. The movie did a really good job of expanding on their familiar personalities and utilizing them within the context of the story. Daphne being this television show host trying to find the next exciting episode topic was a great idea, as was making Fred her cameraman. We also have Velma being skeptical and trying to figure out who is responsible for the strange events on the island using what she has learned in previous mysteries. And naturally, we have Scooby and Shaggy running in fear and eating everything in their path, but the writers found a funny angle to show their dynamic and penchant for making snacks out of everything. Like when the gang was separated near the beginning of the movie and Shaggy and Scooby work at an airport sniffing out prohibited food. Now take a wild guess what they do with the food they take. A lot of thought has been put into the world building and history of Moonscar Island, with the movie slowly peeling away the backstory through flashbacks and other information provided by the characters. The atmosphere is another major reason Zombie Island works, with director Jim Stresstrom bringing the right spooky vibe to the production. Impressively, this was his directing debut, although he'd been a character designer and storyboard artist on several Scooby-Doo projects at Hanna-Barbera, so he was very familiar with the Mystery Gang. A lot of the animation was provided by the Japanese studio Mook, and I find something appealing about the way Western animated characters are drawn by Japanese artists. You can tell through some of the effects and character animation that the film was animated in Japan, yet with them still adapting to the required style. There was clearly an intent here to give the animation a higher quality than any previous Scooby production. In my recent Animaniacs tribute, I shouted out Jean McCurdy, who was the president of Warner Brothers Television Animation at the time. She was credited as an executive producer on Zombie Island, and as seen in a lot of the television shows she produced, like the Spielberg collaborations and the DC animated series, she was someone who seemed to care a lot about making the animation on those productions look as good as possible, even for something being released direct to video. The movie successfully pushes what's possible in an animated family film, giving it that edge, but without forgetting the target audience. The zombies themselves are very much of that classic tradition as they slowly move towards the heroes, but they are not the monsters most people think back to when they think about Zombie Island. Instead, the part a lot of folks remember is the revelation involving the inhabitants on the island who turn out to be cat people. Their transformation is definitely one of the most iconic scenes and is superbly animated. Watching it for the first time, you might think it's the zombies who are the villains and the main ones causing trouble. I think for a lot of us viewing the movie when we were children, we did not see this twist coming. It gets even crazier when the ferry captain turns into this massive werecat. It really showed how far Zombie Island was willing to take the aspects of the franchise inspired by classic monster movies and comic books and take them to the next level. It also struck that balance between these horror elements and the more comedic aspects. There's a great scene involving voodoo dolls that serves multiple purposes, as it provides another key to the mystery and what's happening on this island while presenting some lighthearted comedy. The filmmakers never forget that most viewers are here for the wacky dog antics, and Scooby certainly gets his time to shine along with Shaggy. However, the entire gang is well utilized and do go through some significant development during the story. The voice actors inhabit the roles well, with most even playing the Mystery Gang for the first time. This was surprisingly the only time Billy West voiced Shaggy, and while it's difficult not to compare him to Casey Kasem and now Matthew Lillard, he does a decent job. Scott Innes played Scooby for the first time, following the death of Don Messick, and proved more than suitable. This was the debut of Mary Kay Bergman's turn as Daphne, and she brought an additional spark to the role, although she sadly died a little over a year after the movie's release. After voicing Velma in an episode of Johnny Bravo, B.J. Ward would do it for a while and capture the right level of enthusiasm for mystery solving as well as skepticism. And of course, Frank Welker is Fred, because he's going to voice the character as long as possible, and it's amazing that after all these years, he does not sound that different than he did in 1969. Zombie Island seemed to heavily influence a lot of what came afterwards with the Scooby-Doo franchise. It was of course the first of this line of direct-to-video movies that seemed to be released almost annually. It honestly impresses me that while other hanna-barbera properties like the Flintstones and Yogi Bear seem to get only sporadic new movies and shows, Scoob just kept chugging along without a breather. Structurally, the first live-action Scooby-Doo movie seemed to share quite a number of similarities with Zombie Island. It opens with a standard Mystery Inc. escapade, then the gang splits up for a bit, then reunite with new outfits. Except for Shaggy, of course, once again still wearing that green shirt. They are lured off to an island where strange things are happening, and then it's revealed the person who invited them is not who they appear to be. I don't know if Roger Gosnell and James Gunn were inspired by Zombie Island when they were putting the movie together, but it would not surprise me. It also has a vibe similar to Mystery Incorporated, which used clever world building and a dark atmosphere to build a mystery surround the town. It says a lot about how Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island appeared to shape the franchise from then on. Understand the appeal was seeing these young people go to spooky places, encounter all sorts of monsters, and get into hijinks with this giant dog. However, it also understood the need to spruce up the formula a bit rather than give the viewers the same old things they expect. There are, after all, only so many times you can see someone get unmasked and complain about those meddling kids and their dog. I remember catching Zombie Island on television not long after it was released on video, and could sense this was something new for the series, and I still think it's one of the best things with the Scooby-Doo name. In 2019, Warner Bros. Animation released a sequel titled Return to Zombie Island, which had the gang end up on the island again. It has its amusing moments, and there is some interest in the mystery that develops, but I also found it a step down from the first movie. One of the most unusual decisions is returning the characters to being teenagers after they were depicted as adults in the earlier film. This has no bearing on the plot, and I'm not sure why they did that. Another thing that really was not needed was a whole storyline of Shaggy and Scooby not letting the rest of the gang try to solve mysteries. It's an unnecessary obstacle that the movie drops halfway through anyway. They also went through the trouble of reanimating the flashbacks when they could have just reused footage from the first movie. Nonetheless, like I said, the mystery of trying to figure out who is rising the zombies this time and who are these new cat people is intriguing. The movie does throw a few curveballs here and there. I thought there was going to be an obvious big revelation, but that was not the direction the story went in, so I did find myself surprised a few times. Shaggy and Scooby get a few funny food-related bits too. I thought Return to Zombie Island was mildly entertaining, although the story itself was not anything that special, and there were some changes to the canon I don't think were needed. The original Zombie Island movie will always be something special though. It was an exciting way to enter a new chapter in the world of Scooby-Doo, and provide some new stakes and challenges for Scooby, Shaggy, Fred, Daphne, and Velma. See you next time.